This story is a special one because it begins with the birth of my daughter.
Menopause. Why aren't we talking about this? I'm on a mission that no woman should suffer in silence. I'm on a mission to increase awareness and create a community. I'm on a mission to make this M word mainstream. I'm on the menopause mission.
So I had been seeing you for many years prior to getting pregnant and such for acupuncture, but then of course through our relationship discovered that you were also a doula.
Right.
And you were there for the birth of my daughter, Naomi.
Right.
Which was incredibly special.
It was an incredible experience. Should we recall that? Let's recall that.
For sure.
Right? I mean, I do a birth story at every birth I'm at, and I was reviewing yours. And the staff must have been listening to me because I was laughing in my room as I'm reading this, because you recall the details like, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten all about this. So as I'm going to the birth, so I'll just read this, some parts of it. If seeing one white rabbit at the time of the new moon is considered to be lucky, what can we say about two rabbits on the solstice, a pivotal time in several ways? Not only is a new day dawning, but this day is special because it's winter solstice.
Yeah.
New beginnings, and we'll come back to that. New beginnings are so big, are seen all around me. The two white rabbits standing as sentinels as I arrived at the hospital, and then again when I arrived at the home 8 days later for a home visit, filled me with awe and a sense of universal support and blessings for this new life. Do you remember that?
I did.
Yeah?
I definitely remember the rabbits, for sure.
Right? Okay, so here we are. Jessie, we're at the hospital, and she's saying, I can't do this, I need an epidural. And then the nurse was incredibly supportive. Recalling Jessie's wishes, she approached me in a conspiratory manner while Jessie was in the shower to inform me that Jessie was asking for an epidural and suggested that I ought to go have a talk with her. Kudos to the nurse who did not run off to make preparations for an epidural, and kudos to Greg for standing firm in a difficult time. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to see anybody suffer, but we knew what you were capable of. So Dr. Vincent arrived shortly after the urge to push was observed and held as much as possible. I then watched as a battle of dominance ensued. Dr. Vincent wanted it his way. No, insisted on having it his way. Push hard, don't stop. He did have the safety of the baby in mind, given the show of meconium. He didn't know that when push comes to shove, Jessie could hold her own. Consciously or subconsciously, you pushed his hands out of the way, and he pushed back, knowing the urgency of the situation. I suppose you could say in the end, baby won the battle, for as she emerged, the waters parted at the cry of her new life. Do you remember that?
Not from the observer's perspective, which of course you have.
It's beautiful, right?
Yeah, my beautiful solstice baby.
Yeah, Naomi.
Naomi.
Yeah.
And I'm so incredibly grateful that you are a part of that and are now a part of this new chapter, which is such an identity shift for women and such a big change, at least much larger than what I think we talk about.
Yeah.
So you are there for women through births as a doula. You are there for women's health, which of course a big part of menopause is trying to maintain your health and trying to find supports. Mm-hmm. How did you embark on this incredible journey as a healer?
As acupuncturist, as doula.
Yes.
Okay. And again, that's a big journey too, as life always is. It takes us in different directions, right? Mm-hmm. So I was working at the General Hospital for 15 years in continuing care. I did a lot of palliative care stuff. And it was starting to be really hard. I loved being with the clients and sharing their stories with them and helping them through their transitions. But it was a difficult place to be at the end of life. So at that time, I met somebody who was studying acupuncture, and it just, it really resonated with me. Like, this could be something different, to actually help people through times of transition. And in fact, even with seniors, like I actually spent time going to seniors' places and doing acupuncture with them as I was studying and after I graduated from acupuncture. I just wanted to be able to help people before they got into that place, like, okay, I'm stuck in this place now, right? So I did that for a while, and then while I was doing acupuncture, there was the midwives and the doulas were sharing a room with Dr. Perriman, my husband, naturopathic doctor.
Okay.
Right? And I thought, this is just the next piece of it for me to work with women at birth. Like, it's new beginnings of a different kind. Yeah, death is new beginnings of some kind. That's transition for sure, but this would be a whole different type of new beginnings, right? So I was really excited about that. And so I studied with them and then became a doula, and I just loved bringing the doula work and the acupuncture together. So helping women prepare for the birth, be at the birth, and attend them after the birth, help them to transition. Yeah.
I need to tell you, it was so fortuitous for me to have you in my life at that time as well, because my mother had already transitioned. And so losing my mom at such a young age, I didn't have someone there to hold my hand, or I didn't think I would have someone there to hold my hand. But then I had you.
Wow. And that brings me back. I'll tell a quick story, because transitions, again, and it's how the universe supports us through these transitions, right? Like, there's a lot of fear we come into things with, whether it be birth, whether it be death, like these things bring fear sometimes, But there's also awe, fear and awe. I might have told you this story, but fear and awe are on the same continuum, right? Like you come up to, let's say, the Grand Canyon, and you're at the edge of the canyon and you're looking down and you're like, this is so beautiful and I'm so grateful for this. But you step a little closer and the ground starts to crumble under you, and then you walk it, then you step back and fear, right? But there's fear and awe are so close to each other. And so if you can embrace the beauty of it and deal with the fear around it. So I came to another birth, maybe about the same time as yours actually. And this woman, her father had passed. She'd gone through a miscarriage. Her father had passed. She's having a baby, her third baby, and she's 2 weeks past now. She's 2 weeks past, and this doesn't happen normally with a third baby, but a lot of it was emotional, and I could feel that. And I knew this was the last day. It's 2 weeks past, midwife, she's doing midwives, home birth. And I know, like, okay, like, we got to do something, but I have to be on the plane this afternoon to go to Vancouver for a conference. Like, what am I going to do? So I go to her house, I bring her some food. I'm like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? She starts crying. But as I come to the house, there's an eagle flying over her house. And this is central Edmonton. This is just like, what is this eagle doing? And she's at the window crying and looking at me. I'm like, look, there's an eagle. And the eagle is your dad. And your dad is here. Your dad is here to support you. And we're going to do this. I walked in and she started laboring. I called the midwife. And it's just like, that was it. So that's that fear and awe thing, right?
Yeah.
So beautiful.
It is.
So beautiful. Yeah.
It is. And transitions in our lives can be, but when you're in it, it can be really difficult to see the beauty in those things, because the fear often takes over. And I found that menopause was one of those things for me. So this past year, experiencing my mom's parents, both of them transition in death within 70 days of each other, and going through this huge personal transition, I thought I was losing it, and I was losing it. There was very little emotional control. I felt very alone. That didn't feel beautiful to me. It felt, I was really angry about what was going on with my body, and resentful to my partner even. He doesn't need to deal with these things. So I'd like to chat with you about what happens within a woman's process and body in the menopause transition, and let's share some of the beauty inside of that experience.
Right. I mean, there are physical changes that happen for sure, and it feels like a bomb's been dropped on you sometimes, right? For some women, like I've interviewed a few people, you know, in preparation for this, like, what was it like for you, or what do you anticipate it'll be like? And for some, you know, who are in their 60s now, and they look back and they're like, oh yeah, like now that I look back at it, I think I know that was menopause, and like I was in the worst anger that I've ever experienced. Like, what was that all about, right? And so, yeah, it feels like your world's falling apart. But again, I mean, you know, when I think of menopause, I'm past menopause. I call it moonopause because I'm in moonopause, because what happens with me, it's not like a premenstrual, premenopause thing, but when the moon is coming full, I still feel that expansive energy. Like the energy just gets so big in the body. It's not a bad thing, but it's sometimes a hard thing to control. I mean, that's why some traditions have special things around menopause, around menstrual cycles, right?
Oh, yes.
Right? They have special things for women, and the women might go in a special tent. And it's not because they're isolating them because they're dirty. That's not why they're going in the tent. It's because they're powerful, right? So it's a powerful time. But when you're not familiar with that, it's big and it's hard to deal with.
And it's scary.
And
there's
it's
a
scary.
lot of fear. There's
Yeah.
much more fear than awe.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
feel like you're out of control. So you work within the realm of acupuncture. Let's talk a bit about acupuncture in itself and how it works with the body.
In regards to menopause, or in general?
Well, I think overall,
Yeah.
first of all, and then yes, in regards to menopause.
Yeah, so acupuncture is amazing, and I've seen that myself. I've seen, you know, the clients responding to it in absolutely profound ways. Like, it's really made me you know, just watching those experiences. Obviously, I was pulled into it for a reason, but what I see is, so what it does is it's balancing the body, basically, right? Whenever anything presents, be it emotional or physical, there's something out of balance, right? So yeah, you can go on antidepressants or, you know, something pharmaceutical, and yes, that might take some of the symptoms away, but what about the root cause of the problem, right? So what's the root cause of the problem? Often there's imbalances, obstructions, constrictions in the body that doesn't allow the flow of qi and the flow of blood. And right now, like through winter, I've been doing a lot of this with women, and through COVID too. Like, what we've been seeing is a real constriction in this low, they call it the Ming Men area, or, you know, the central area of energy. In yoga, they'll talk about that. That's where you build your energy. But in winter, or under fear, it becomes very stagnant. It's cold, it's stagnant, it's sitting there. That's adrenals, it's your kidneys. It's just stagnant. And when you don't have, it's your main battery power. If your battery power is weak, the rest of your body's not being supported, right?
Yeah.
You're tired, you're in pain, your stomach's not working properly. So we always have to support that. So, and again, it's the same thing that happens in menopause. It's the same thing that happens in birthing. It's that kidney energy. And it's so powerful that when I'm in birthing time with a woman, when she's laboring, it draws from me. So what happens is when the body is absolutely in need of energy, it'll take from where it needs. So it'll take from after a birth. I'm not just tired because I spent maybe 20 hours at the hospital. I am tired because that kidney energy's gone whoom, right to the mom where it needs to go, right? And so, yeah, having to support myself, but that's what we're dealing with in menopause, or, yeah.
So that's stuck. There's
stuck.
something stuck, and so it
Yeah.
helps create the
A
movement and flow
Yeah.
back within the body so
Yeah.
that it can regulate, so that it can find balance.
Exactly.
So what is happening when we transition through menopause? What is happening inside a woman's body?
Yeah, so yeah, basically that energy stagnant, they call it yin deficiency. Like a yin deficiency is this imbalance in blood, basically, that blood and yin kind of are the same thing. So there's an imbalance in hormones and blood. And then you get the hot flashes, right? And you get the mood things, because that's liver, right? So liver yin deficiency, and then you get these mood things happening. So again, and that's also, yin is also moon, right? It's tied in with the moon.
Right.
So then with the moon time as well. So yeah, those are some of the things that are happening in the body. Yeah.
So where would you start? I know that the first thing that we usually do is you do something, you check my pulses.
Tongue, and the intake is really important too, because we get a lot from watching the woman. So very often, they'll come in with maybe just some small things they're talking about, but in looking at them, looking at the eyes, they start talking, tears start forming in their eyes. I'm like, okay, tell me a little bit more, right? So you kind of have to follow that, because there's a lot going on. And so pulses and tongue are the physical things. It also tells me emotionally, but so sometimes there are other things that you can pick up, that there's subtle things, but there's a message there, and so you have to pay attention as a practitioner, like what else is going on here.
And what are you looking for?
On the pulse? So on the pulse, when we feel the pulse, it's not just like going to the doctor and they're checking your pulse. It's telling us how things are communicating in the body. We're looking at different levels, the superficial, the deeper. So it's telling us what's happening on the outside, what's happening on the inside, and how things are communicating with each other.
Right.
So it tells us a lot. And the tongue, the same thing. Often, again, it comes back to the gut. If it's kidneys and something going on, often it's digestion too. And then that'll show us like a coat on the tongue or a redness on the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen an impact on my digestion, whereas I was very regular, and as long as I was within my own support system, which wake up, I have my lemon water, and then I have, I do have my 1 cup of coffee, but then I have my smoothie, I have my probiotics, and I'm in a very controlled system. I have pretty healthy habits.
Yeah.
Even within that support structure, I saw shifts in my digestion and have been experiencing still some shifts in my digestion and such, for sure. So the energy, definitely, the anger is, I don't think that I have felt more angry in my life for what feels like no reason than when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this time is also a big spiritual time. It's not just physical. And so it's about clearing lots of old emotional things. Same like going into a birth, and that's how I often would prepare women, and that's what I go into it with. So the birth I'm thinking of is, in particular, was the most extreme one, was 3-day. So prodromal labor. So one day we go in, we're laboring for 10 hours, everything stops. Next day, same thing. Laboring for 10 hours, everything stops. 3rd day, I'm like, okay, something's going on here. What's going on here? And then I remembered the midwife in our discussion I had with her. She's like, Valerie, when you see that, think of the relationship with the mother. There's some old emotional stuff going on with her. So I asked her, like, where's your mother? She's like, oh, my mom passed a year ago, and we never settled things. And now she's birthing a daughter.
Yep.
Right. Okay, I see the connection.
Yeah.
I see the connection. So I gave her an herbal tincture, put her in the bath. She cried for 2 hours straight, and then she had her baby.
Right. Release.
Right? So there's lots, when we're going through these transitions, sometimes a lot of emotional stuff, it needs to be released. It needs to come out, right? So, and it could be something, who knows what's in there? Is it ancestral, right? There's a lot of things we don't know that's tucked in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. So
Yeah.
to release. So definitely I have found through my lived menopause transition that there were things that have come up that I thought were dealt with long ago, but
Right.
I think we're looking at things from through a different lens and from a different perspective, if you will. So we want to move the energy. We want to shift things around. Let's talk about the acupuncture specifically itself. So you're using needles. How does that work?
Yeah, so the needles, there are active points in the body. So this has been studied for many, many years, right? This goes back to cavemen. You know, they've seen that people were doing maybe acupressure on different places in the body, right? So these are active points. And active points, now we use needles to activate and stimulate the movement of energy. So they're the most active places in the body that we can start this movement happening. So there's a great book. It's called The Spark in the Machine. This doctor who wrote exactly about this, and he's doing surgery on people, and he sees like, hey, these are what they talk about as meridians. So now he's an acupuncturist as well, because he was doing points on people before going into surgery. They come in with heart problems, like he's doing points on these people, like, oh, this is this point, and getting really good results. So he's like, oh, this is what it is, right? Like these are really special places, these meridians that run through the body, this communication network. It's big, right? So we're activating everything when we're doing that.
Yeah. We are just this big communication network of energy.
Yeah.
So let's drill down a little bit more specific. How does acupuncture help really specifically in reference to menopause?
So again, I mean, in general, it's going to create that balance in the body. It's going to work at balancing things out. I always say to people, like, one of the key things is taking the stress levels down, and which is the adrenals and the kidneys too, right? So if you can take the stress levels down, and then things start to open up in the body and start to communicate with each other better, that's where you're going to get results, right?
Yes. So through my exploration, I've discovered that my symptoms and my lived experience of menopause is definitely a bit more extreme than some. And that is largely due to the fact that I am adrenally burnt out as well. And so those two play with each other, right?
Exactly. Right. And the other thing is to remember is we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? The bigger energy. So we think that everything happens within our body, and that's true to some extent, but we can also bring in help from outside. And so when we do the acupuncture, we're also opening up that communication network to the macrocosm. Like, we can change things inside, but if we can bring in the bigger energy from outside to help to balance things, that's really important. And so that's why we do Qigong exercises. I show a lot of my clients who come in with these things just on Monday. Same thing. She's like, what can I do? What can I do? And they want tools that they can go home with.
Yes.
Yeah, acupuncture is great, but what can I do at home? So I show them some Qigong exercises. What does Qigong do? It builds that core. It distributes the energy. It's that pump, and that old pump that you bring the water up, start distributing it, right? Yeah. So doing something like that is really important, right?
Yeah. Valerie, what was your lived experience through menopause?
Oh, through menopause. Ooh. What was that like? There were lots of transitions in my life at that time. Yeah. And sometimes that comes because of menopause. Sometimes it comes along with it, just because it's the time in your life. I don't know. I didn't have a lot of physical experiences. Like, it wasn't like I didn't have tons of hot flashes, and I wasn't, I wasn't functional, nothing like that. I see that from some women, but I wasn't that way. But a lot of emotional stuff, stuff, right? Because like you, probably had a lot of adrenal stuff going on. Like I had kids, and I'm working at the general hospital, and I'm studying acupuncture, and I was like, right? Yeah. Trying to keep track of everything, and it was a lot.
Yeah. So same thing for me. I think I've had probably 3 or 4 hot flashes maybe. And with some diet and exercise and stuff, I've been able to really manage, I think, a lot of the more neck down physiological responses. For me, a lot has impacted my brain and I guess my heart as well. So
sure.
But it feels like the ability to articulate sentences, which I'm struggling with in this moment, remembering things and just feeling like I can think the same, but I can't think the same. And we are changed. We are different on the other side of this.
Exactly. And that's not a bad thing too. Again, it's a transition, but with regards to the heart, like this is the water, this is the fire, and fire and water always trying to support each other, right? But if the kidney energy is weak, then the fire gets out of hand, right? It's not cooling the fire of the heart, and then you got that emotional stuff happening, right? So that's really big.
I mean,
Yeah.
we already know from my birth story that I'm pretty fiery to begin with.
Yes, you are. And I appreciate that.
Thank you
I
for
love that about
appreciating
you.
that.
I learned from you.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I am a very passionate person. I feel a shift in that, in that it's not so sparkly and fireworky, you know, with the sparks kind of coming off everywhere, which is definitely, that was me. That would embody me. You know, I kind of go everywhere and kind of start these fires wherever I go, and not a bad thing, lighting up sparks in people, right?
Yeah.
It feels like I'm moving into more of a slow internal burn where the flames are really rich and they've been there for a long time, but it's more of a consistent, stable inner feeling.
Right, exactly. And women find a new direction at this time in their life. They start to think about, I guess men do too, right? But I can talk from a woman's perspective. But you know, what's important to me right now? What is really important to me right now? Like, you know, you're at a transitional time in your life. You've, you know, raised your kids, and what now? You know, so Robert and I, you know, we bought land. I don't know if you knew that. So we bought land outside BC when it was 2 years ago. We're like, okay, enough of this craziness. What do we really want for our lives? What do we want for our lives? So we bought land, 44 acres. We become farmers. We're, you know, tilling the land. We're chopping wood. You know, like,
I love that.
I'm like, yeah. And some people look at us and say, what are you doing? Like, at this time in your life, he's 71. Like, you're going to start this now? Like, yep. If not now, when? He's out collecting walnuts, you know, and he's got his hat, and he's just like, just loving it, you know, getting grimy, you're in the mud, but loving it.
I love that you shared that, because I feel like I'm really embracing and embarking on new vision. And my partner and I are talking about building a geodome or two or three, and taking care of people who come and stay on the land, and kind of getting back to the basics and not being so integrated and entwined in the hustle. I've done 25 years of hustle, and it has taken its toll.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you get called, you get called, and it becomes undeniable. You know, it becomes so loud that you can't not listen.
Exactly. and I think it's nature itself too. Like, when we're out there and you see the trees and the rootedness of them, and you walk the trails, and the birds are coming to meet you, and the hummingbirds are flying to say hi, and like, we got to reconnect to nature, right? Like, we've been so disconnected in our cities, in our work, in our, you know, the crazy stuff that goes on around us. We have to really reconnect. Right?
Vitamin N. So you were there for my birth as my doula, and that was such an incredible chapter. When we embark on perimenopause, we are preparing our body to no longer conceive children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I want to talk a bit about your involvement in both of those transitions in my life and in women's lives, and how they differ.
They differ, I suppose, some of the experiences are similar for sure, as we talked about, right? Some similarities, but differences in the sense that, like when you're birthing, there's, you know, your womb is still intact, and, you know, you're still probably having other kids, maybe, and that part of you is still generating in the same way it was. But in menopause, you know that that's something that you're going to be putting behind you. And there is some sadness about that to some extent. Not with the periods. Most people are saying, I'm happy to be over with the periods. I don't need that anymore. But there is something that's different, right? And again, it's not a bad thing. So there's this book called Wild Power, and one of my clients actually referred me to this one. Not specifically this one. It's this author This one's speaking about women and menstruation, but she also refers to, in this book, she also refers to menopause.
Okay. So discover the magic of your menstrual cycle and awaken the feminine path to power.
Right.
Magic.
It is magic. It's magic. Like there's the Celtic magic. There's also a wonderful book I'm reading. It's called If Women Rose Rooted. And it's about the Celtic way of looking at women and transitions and what that means. It's powerful. And again, it's about being rooted. It's about getting back to nature. It's the nature outside, but the nature inside as well. Right? Because the nature is about what's inside you as well as outside.
Definitely.
Right? So yeah, so that wild power, again, that's what the Celtic one is talking about, like getting in touch with that. Menopause, this is what comes out of this book here, the wild power one. Menopause is the final ignition of your calling, a transition that births you from the holding of your womb into the womb of the world. You are ready to leap out of your old skin, but a part of you is screaming, no, because it is a step into the great unknown. And that can be a little scary. It is a death movement in this final stage of your fertile time. It is a time to go beyond the confines of your cycle now to become a full revelation of your wild power on service to the world.
I loved okay, so this is so amazing that we're talking to you as a doula in regards to birth. And it says a transition that births you from the holding of your womb into the womb of the world.
Right. Like, how does that fit, right?
That's amazing. That puts it into words.
It does. It does.
Wow.
Right?
That's incredible. That's incredible.
One of my clients I was talking to, she was saying that the end of the season, it's the end of the season in life. Embrace it. End of season, not meaning end of end. It's a seasonal change within you, right? Mm-hmm. Embrace it, she said. The next season is not talked about. Hush, hush. Right? That's how she feels it is, a hush-hush kind of thing. And it could be a place of grief. It could be an end of life in some ways. Childbearing years are over. Yeah. There's some resentment. But her final words to me were, be curious. Oh. Be curious. Right?
Yeah.
There's something in that.
Yeah.
Right?
Hush-hush. So it's part of the reason why we are here talking, because I felt, other women who I've touched base with have felt, I've had so many conversations that we're just so hush-hush about the M word.
Right.
Why?
Why?
What do you think?
Yeah, it's same with the women's menstrual cycle. Like it used to be in cultures, people would go through these things with assistance of, the elders around them, teaching them about this transition.
Community.
Exactly. But we've gotten away from that.
And we're all just on our own. And no woman will suffer in silence.
Right.
If we talk more about our experiences, if we share about what is happening through this transition.
And how beautiful it can be. How beautiful it can be. Because it's a new stage in our life. And it is powerful. It is powerful.
So that brings us full circle to the fear versus the awe.
Right.
So I think because it is so unknown, because we may not have had those conversations, because women may not be in your life in your family, like my mother and my grandmother, to have those conversations, let's lean into community. Let's lean into those that have walked with us and continue to walk with each other, so that we can allow for ourselves to work through that fear, and then also allow for more of the awe to be present.
Right. I'm recalling some personal things, and it's just bringing up a lot of stuff for me. And
let's talk about that.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm even going to cry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't intend to do this.
Well, I think isn't that what we talk about, is just let it flow.
It's because it's you and I can't. So my son passed away 2 years ago. Jesse is his name. And so when I'm seeing Jesse, it just brings it up for me.
Now, the beauty of it is an experience I had in January at the full moon. I was laying in bed and the full moon was shining on the bed. And I just like, holy cow, this moon is big. And I had to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom, I came back, and I laid down in bed just embracing this light around me. And I don't know if I fell asleep or what happened. Next thing I knew, there's somebody walking through my door, my bedroom door, and he's standing beside me. And I'm like, what is happening? And I pick up his arm and I smell it. I smell smoke, because Jesse was all about smoke. I'm like, Jesse. And I looked up and his face was just glowing with light. And the bed was covered with fireflies. And I'm like, oh my God, like, Jesse. And then he looked at me and he said, I have to go now because the fireflies have come. And then he just went away. But it just reminds me of all this, like, how transitions can be fearful, but they're also beautiful. There's also beauty in it. Right? And life and death are something we all experience.